Teamster Power 767 Reality Check with Jeff Schenfeld and Garfield Hooper. All right, welcome to another episode of our podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Greg Kerwood at a local 25 out of Boston, Massachusetts. And we have him on here today specifically because we want to talk about 401k.
Yes.
Yes, very important. I don't think I wish I could say that everyone starts their 401k when they first start, but that's just not the case. So Greg, we're going to start off with you. I'm just going to ask you a quick question. What percentage of people, members, do you think start off with their 401k right away, roughly?
Well, it's different now because we have automatic enrollment for full
Mm,
time and some of the long time part-timers,
mm, mm.
part-timers. But
Yeah.
I would say prior to that,
Yes.
man, maybe 20, 25%, I would say right away, maybe even less than that. I think a lot of people don't even find out about it until further down the line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely
I,
not a high
Yeah.
number.
I remember that when I first became full time, I noticed the 401k come out, the 1%. I didn't know anything about it. I was young. I didn't go full time until I think I was 29 when I finally went full time. And it starts off with the 1%, and then it like increases it by like 1% every year or something like that. I think it's what it did. And then a few years later, I think I discovered your Facebook page, and I was like, okay, well, I need to, this is my future. I need to start working on this. So I started following your guidelines. It was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. The number of times I've read that you explained to somebody it's important to have like a balanced, diversified portfolio suitable for your age. It's like, I wonder if he just has that like set up on like a macro on his keyboard to take
I
that
wish.
automatically.
I wish I did. It would make life a lot easier. But it's
Yeah.
well, the reality is
Yeah.
that it is that simple, and people get intimidated by finance intentionally, generally,
Yeah.
because the finance industry makes money off people being intimidated by it. But it really isn't that complicated, and certainly with a 401k like ours and the limited investments, effective investments, but a limited amount that we have. It really isn't that difficult. And so part of the goal of the Facebook group is to sort of get people over that hump, get them to dive in the water, give them a hand when they need it, and just sort of show them how simple it is to be effective at it and manage it yourself, with no more than a half an hour worth of effort a year. I mean, it's really not something you should spend a lot of time on. We have this image, I think, of the guy reading the morning paper, checking the stocks, and calling his broker and all that jazz. But that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a long-term investment where solid, slow, and steady wins the race, and panic and changing with the newspaper is the enemy. So once you get people to sort of understand that concept and they see it working, I think that's really what makes it effective.
Mhm.
So let me ask you a question. So when you start speaking to people about it, how receptive are they? Now, like you said, it's automatic enrolling, never used to be, but once you start talking to them, are they receptive right away, or does it take a couple of times, like to speak to them about different things?
Usually by the time they get to me, they're already interested. So
Okay.
that's somewhat easy. I mean, we do have folks that come to the group who fancy themselves investment experts, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, and nothing against them. I've made it very clear in the group from the beginning. The analogy that I used to use is that, everybody has to learn how to drive a car, and some people are still backing out of the driveway, and some people are already on the highway. And what I didn't want was the group to be taken over by the people already on the highway, because they would talk over everybody's head, get into things that weren't really necessary, that type of thing. And so I wanted to make sure that we started with getting people to back out of the driveway and learn how to drive down the street. And so, once in a while, I get somebody with some outsized ideas. If crypto is doing well, we get a lot of crypto people who are suddenly raving about crypto and that type of thing. But in general, people are there because they're looking for help and looking for information. And so it's pretty easy to just sort of bring them along slowly and get them, from wherever they're starting, which is varies by the person, to where they need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe you just explain this a little bit. So obviously, when you're first starting off and you're getting into your career, it's going to be what percentage you're going to put in is going to be different than what you're putting at the later stages of your career, right?
Sure.
That's a fact. So like, what do you suggest for someone just starting off first 5 years?
I mean, I always say to people, you should contribute whatever you can afford,
Mhm.
because the other side of that coin, I mean, you're right, we have certainly make less money in the beginning, but the other side of that coin is that money that you put in early has much more time to grow and compound, and it's going to have a bigger impact on what you have when you retire. So, a lot of people say, oh, I can't afford it now, I can't afford it now. And I don't think they understand how much they're losing out on by even just not contributing 1%, or just throwing something in every week to add to that pile while they're young, because that money is going to grow way more than the money you put in when you're 45, 50 years old. So I always tell people that. I mean, we don't want people stuffing everything in their 401k and living on ramen noodles either. So you have to sort of find the balance, and the other side of it, and people get worried, but I think you have the opportunity to adjust things and change things continually. So if your paycheck shows up and it's too low for you, you can go right back in and adjust that percentage the very next week. There's no fee, there's no charge, there's no, you don't have to get it right on the first try. You can keep manipulating it. You can set it so that it goes up 1% every year automatically. So you don't have to
Mhm.
think about it. You can do it. Some people do it to coincide with the raise. Every August 1st, they get a raise. They increase their percentage, so they're still getting the same paycheck and they don't even miss the money. There's a million different ways to do it that work for whatever lifestyle people are leading.
Yeah, I try to talk to people about it. Like it's obviously important to start your 401k early and use it, but when people say to me is like how much I should put it into it, and I tell them the same thing, do what you can afford, but you also have to consider too, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. You know, put what you need to do, what you need to in there, but be sure you have enough money to save and go do the things that you want with you and your family because nobody's guaranteed to retire happy and healthy, especially this as this job has become more and more of a safety hazard over the last few years. You've really got to pay attention to what you're doing, and it's just important that people go out there and live their life like when they get the chance.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's also, it's a 401k is a piece of the financial puzzle,
Yeah.
and you want to do things in the correct order, or you're going to regret it down the line. So if you're coming to me, and people have, and said, I've got $15,000 in credit card debt, or I don't have a savings account, I'm not going to tell them to start dumping money into their 401k, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
tell them that they need to start putting aside an emergency savings so that if something happens, they're not reaching for that credit card. And then I'm going to tell them they have to work down that credit card debt and get that down. And then I'm going to tell them, now that you've got your financial house in better order, now you want to focus on retirement. Because the other side is, as much as the early money counts a lot, it's also never too late. I have lots of people that come to me, hey, I'm retiring in 5 years. I kind of blew this off. I didn't really get to it. Well, the law allows for catch-up contributions, so that if say you're a top-rate driver or a feeder driver, and you're making good money, and your kids are grown, and suddenly you've got all this money, this time to save in 5 years, you can put away 30 plus $1,000 a year. So even in those 5 years, especially if you're not going to need the money right away, retirement isn't the end of the line, it's the halftime, it's the middle. So if you're not going to tap into that money the second you retire, that money may have 10 more years to grow on top of that. So getting it in those last 5 years, and you don't need it until you're 75, or you want to pass it on to your kids or whatever it is, it's never too late. So that's another point to make.
Okay, I've got a question.
That's important.
What is, because we have the traditional 401k and we have a Roth 401k. So explain to us and our listeners, what is the major differences between those two things?
That is a fantastic question, and it leads to the biggest point of confusion about the 401k. So originally, back when 401ks were created, there was only one option. It was a pre-tax 401k. And the idea was that you would be allowed to put money away now during your peak earning years and not pay taxes on it now, but defer the taxes to when you're retired, and in theory would be making less money because you're retired, be in a lower tax bracket, and therefore save on the taxes. If you were working in the 24% bracket and you're retired in the 16% bracket, you'd be saving all that tax money by deferring. Along came, I believe, Congressman Roth back in the 80s or so, who said, well, that's cool, but what if we tried to reverse it somewhat and we let people pay the taxes now and then when they retire, not pay taxes at all? So if you do pre-tax money, you're reducing your tax burden now, paying the taxes later. If you do Roth money, you're paying the taxes now, but reducing or eliminating your tax burden when you retire. Now, the point of confusion comes that the Roth language, Roth itself, the man's name was tied to an IRA originally. And an IRA is a very different account. It's funded directly by you through a broker and has much lower limits. And so the biggest point of confusion is that when people see Roth 401k, they think that the Roth IRA limit applies to the Roth contributions to the 401k. So I don't know how many people come to me and say, I've maxed out my Roth contributions. Now what do I do? When the reality is the Roth contribution limit is the same as pre-tax or a combination of both. It's $23,500 this year with an extra $7,500 if you're over 50, and then there's another little bit more if you're between 60 and 63. But Roth is the same. So, if people say, well, I don't do the 401k for Roth because, I want a higher limit or whatever it is, it's the same limit. So you can put $23,500 away in Roth contributions, and that money that you put in will be taxed now, but it's going to grow tax-free for the rest of your life, until you take it out. So that's the distinction, is when you pay the taxes. Now, for us, because we have a pension, with a pension and Social Security, it's very unlikely that we're going to be in a lower bracket in retirement because our income is going to more or less stay relatively the same. So for almost all of us, Roth is going to be the better choice. Now, there are exceptions if you're a single feeder driver making $170,000 a year, or if you have a spouse who makes a lot of money but doesn't have a retirement plan, then as a collective, the two of you, your income is going to drop significantly in retirement. And those might be situations where you might want to do pre-tax. But in general, for the average member, Roth contributions are going to be a better choice.
Okay, so on that point, so are the contributions you can make combined for the 401k and the Roth 401k? Can you combined? Can you only do 23.5 unless you're over 50?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was where I was confused. I was like, is it 23 a piece? Like, could I feasibly do 40? Or okay,
No.
That's what I thought.
No, but it's the confusion is the word Roth.
Yeah.
To be honest, they shouldn't have reused Roth for IRAs and 401ks because that's what screws everybody up. But understandably, the principle is the same. It's after-tax money that you don't pay taxes on later. But with the different limits and the different types of accounts, it causes all sorts of confusion for people. But yes, it's 23.5. Whether you do pre-tax or Roth or some combination of both, that's your limit for the year.
And just, in general with 401ks, it's contingent on your situation. It's not a general thing, how much you want to contribute and whatnot. It's very important because, there's no just one set thing. You have to, like you said, you have to take into consideration, what you're going through, where you're at, married, not married, kids. Everything is important. So, I mean, that's really important. So let me ask you a question. I know, again, there are different situations, but is there based off of just general question, is there one question that just comes up more than most?
Definitely that Roth question comes up a lot.
Okay.
I think the other big question is usually people want to sort of know where they're at. Like you just said, am I contributing enough? Some people will just throw it out there. Like I've got 250,000 in my account after 20 years. Is that good? Is that bad? Am I doing it wrong? That type of thing. And as you just said, there really is no right and wrong. It goes up, it goes down. Me personally, I've contributed more or less to, when my daughter was born, I had to drop it back a little bit. When she's older, it goes back up. It's the rare person who can manage to, max it out every year for 30 years. But again, that isn't all that important. I mean, the effort in saving something is really the key
Yeah.
to the whole thing. That's the other side. People get tied up on the investments, well, am I making enough money? They focus on returns and this and that, and that's really not the approach. You want to, as Garfield's going to point out, you want to have a balanced, diversified portfolio where you have different pieces and different percentages so that you're covering all the bases. So when one's going up, the other's going down or whatever. But over the long term, it goes up because this is a long-term process. And you don't
Absolutely.
want to focus on, oh my God, this one went down. Now the stock market's gone down in the last 2 months. Everybody's sending me messages. Should I move this? Should I change that? Should I do this? That's the opposite of what you want to do. When you panic and you react to markets, that's when you lock in losses and you make mistakes and you miss out on the rebounds and you cost yourself a small fortune. Have your plan, stick with it once a year, whether it's January 1st or your birthday or your anniversary. Roll out of bed, make yourself a cup of coffee and a donut, sit in front of the computer, adjust your investments because you're 1 year older, rebalance your account, and then put it away until 12 months later, and you'll be fine.
That's
Yeah,
what I
I
do.
just want to reiterate
Yeah.
what you just said because it was very important. Okay, the long game.
Yeah.
You got to be in it for the long. I mean, you just exactly. You'll make bad decisions if you're like, oh, this what's going here, it's dropping here. I got to do it. Don't do it. And I'm just reiterating what Greg said, and it's very, very important. That's if there's going to be one important lesson there, that's going to be it. That's gonna be really it. So let me ask you, what's the Facebook page? What's the name?
It's UPS Teamsters 401k resource group.
Okay.
It's been 5 or 6 years now. I think we've had it. We've got about 15, 16,000 members. It's there. Everything you need to know is there. If you're having difficulties, everybody on it is, they're welcome to reach out to me directly anytime. People do. I'm happy to walk people through the process. But the important thing, and you just touched on one of them, but the other important thing is don't be afraid to get into the game because, putting that money away is 90% of what it takes to prepare yourself for retirement. The rest of it, you can tweak now, tweak later, we can work on it. But if the money isn't in there because you never saved it, then there's not a lot that can be done when you say, well, I'm retiring next year and what do I do now? Right.
Well,
So the key is getting that money in there and then come to the group and we'll teach you how to take care of it and manage it so that you'll be very happy when you retire.
And I want to point out too, when people get freaked out about the stock market going up and down, you're still buying. Like your money is still buying low at that point. If it drops, sure, some of the money that was in your account's going down, but now you're still buying those same stocks or things, that same S&P 500 stocks at the low price now, which means when it goes back up, and it does, we've got it. What is it? 8% year over year usually happens. Goes up every year. You're buying low at that point. So, which means the money you're putting in it right now automatically is coming out of your check this week. That money's going to grow. So, like you said, we can't stress this enough. It's the long game. Like, don't freak out about it. If you need to lower it for bills or whatever, then do what you need to do. But don't let the market adjust or change what you do with your 401k. Let the market change what you do. If you've got a spare $1,000 that you want to go buy stocks with that you don't have to worry about, that's what you worry about when the stocks go up and down. You worry about that. This 401k, this is something you're not going to touch until you're 60 years old.
Yeah. And I should also point out, not only are you buying low, but you still own what you owned before.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you start moving things around, it's not a bank account where you see, oh, my balance is going up and down and I've gained money and I've lost money and whatever it is. You've gained and lost nothing. What you own is the underlying shares, and those underlying shares change in value. So if they drop in value, you have 1,000 shares and the shares go down, you still have 1,000 shares. And
Exactly.
as long as you don't cash those in and sell things, you're going to have those 1,000 shares when things go back up and they're worth more. And so it's the panic that's the enemy.
Yeah.
As long as you're holding what you're holding, you still have it. People, they think of it as a bank account and they see, oh, I lost 10 grand on my 401k. Well, you didn't actually lose anything. And in fact, as Garfield just said, you're continually buying every week when you're contributing, and now you're buying the cheap stuff. Everything's on sale. So at the end of the day, you're increasing the quantity of shares that you're going to have when it bounces back, and that's going to put you in the driver's seat.
Yep.
Yeah. So good. So Garfield, we're going to post that. We're going to post that for the Facebook page. But I want to ask you one last thing. Anything you want to say? One last thing. What do you want to say about anything?
I would just say to folks, especially, some are seeing that on their check, like you said, don't know what it is. Come to the group, ask questions. I'm happy to answer anything. We got some other very knowledgeable people in there, some retirees who've been through the whole process. Some people who are just, financially savvy and that's their thing. But it isn't complicated. It isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to be embraced. It's a tool to be used in correlation with your pension and Social Security, to help you give you and your family the retirement that you work your butt off for and that you deserve.
All right.
Also, be sure and check out Greg. He's on with David Allen on the Roswell Hub podcast most weekends. They do a great podcast. It's very informative.
Absolutely.
So check them out whenever you get a chance.
Yep, absolutely. So we want to thank Greg Kerwood. We really, really want to thank you for coming on, explaining some things, and we can still help out. Go to the Facebook page, and and for any more information. So from myself and Garfield and Greg, have a good day.
We all deal with national language, but on this podcast, when it comes to supplemental language, we deal mostly with the southern region. And as always, it's best to get advice from your local stewards or business agents. If you would like to reach out to us with any questions, we have an email address, 767realitycheck@gmail.com. That's 767realitycheck@gmail.com.
And remember, strong people stand up for themselves, but the strongest people stand up for others.